you all for coming. I think this is might be tied with one of the larger crowds we've had, so I appreciate everybody that literally waited out to be here tonight. I do apologize for the conditions, but it just very inherent with this year's spring to have water sitting all around us. We tried to mow actually today, and I guess that we got a mower stuck and had to send another one in after it to get it pulled back out. So it has been a spring for sure. I know a lot of our backyards, as you just mentioned, was probably looking the same way. But again, very appreciative. I do like doing these chats. I think face-to-face is, call it old-fashioned, call it what you want, but I do enjoy just sitting down and having a conversation with people, especially when text can get lost, whether it's email, social media, whatever it is. So it's fun to just kind of gather around with a bunch of people and talk about the city that we all love here. I like to keep these very informal. Those that have been here before, you probably kind of get a sense of where to go. We really just kind of let it flow naturally. Sometimes I'll have a department head with me to talk about specific hot button items, just depending on the time of year. On a night like tonight, though, we could just again just sit around and somebody can pop off with an idea, and then we can kind of gather some thoughts on it, some ideas. I like to take a lot of notes, so I'll be writing stuff. Sometimes there's some follow-up items. If you want to just give me your contact information, and we can continue the conversation thereafter. But I want to kick us off with a fun one. One that I've seen, I think it was 127 comments the last time I saw it, was about basically open burns or burning stuff in the backyard, chimeneas, whatever you want to say. It's so when I was talking to public safety, and this has come up each year since I've been here, around this time of year when it finally starts to get nice. But essentially, it's a smoke issue. But has anybody had experiences before where they've either had some marshmallows going or some hot dogs going in the backyard, and it's been a nice, pleasant evening, and then maybe a neighbor has said something, or maybe you just preempted it, invite the neighbor over and saying, hey, let's have some good times? Anyone had a situation like that yet? No? No burns at all? What would you guys think about maybe exploring, allowing maybe a small chimney or chimeria in the backyard, as long as it's contained or something like that? Smoke problems abound?
I have a lot that backs up the coolidge.
Yes, ma'am?
So they're long lots, and we're not right on top of each other. So unless it bothers somebody, I don't know what the problem.
Okay.
My neighbor has one, and I've been over there.
Yeah.
I think we made marshmallows or something, so we have food going.
Well, you were going to say...
No, and my reasoning is, in addition to the smoke, we also got 40-foot lots.
Sure.
I understand that, with St. John's Woods, they have a slightly different situation because of the depth. But when you start getting into allowing one neighborhood in the city to do it, and not the other, you just open it up yourself for a whole realm of party.
Sure.
But my primary concern is that we're a majority 40-foot lot,
Pretty close together.
and who determines what's reasonable?
Yeah, and logistical issues abound for sure, right, as we run into this, and what's small to one is a rager to, can be a rager to somebody else.
We're relying on the homeowner to self-regulate, self-police, and I don't know if I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
If we're talking about wood burning, wood burning, fire pits, the amount of smoke emitted, that anyone with asthma, COPD,
Sure.
that's a concern. Now, I've seen these things in backyards, driving through the neighborhoods, even though they're illegal. I've seen small little glowing embers. I've seen wood piled where the flames are licking, 10,
Yikes.
15 feet in the air.
Well, it's too
Then
bad.
we're talking about electrical lines, low-hanging branches. I don't want to spend the night worrying about my garage catching fire or my house catching fire.
Yeah, no, neither do I.
So I'm a no.
Yeah. You guys mentioned something over here? Thoughts? No? My neighbor's got a beautiful one. When I moved in, before they put a fence in, I got new neighbors, and nice, gorgeous one, like brick built right into the extra space in the driveway. And I was gonna question it because the family had been here for forever. I was wondering how many chances they ever had to actually use it versus, maybe just keep a lid on it or grill or something.
I learned something new though. They have, and this is probably not new at all, they have propane grills, which are more decorational than, which don't emit smoke. You can control the flames. Those I don't seem to have a problem with.
No, and I say smoke, it really,
they're
from a
not-
policy standpoint, it has come down to smoke every time we've kind of talked about this. And you have a smokeless option, you'll likely not have an issue at all, not from your neighbors or anybody. I've seen them as small as tabletop units, just kind of around a little circle table and warm your hands with them.
Those are permissible, correct?
Yeah, well, it's not a smoke, there's not a smoke issue.
Yeah.
So it's, when I was looking at it, it's the burning of wood, sticks, and trash. The ordinance really focuses on what you're burning and the smoke that arises from it. So,
Yep.
I don't think you'll ever have an issue from a neighbor on something like that. So,
I don't know, that we've already had a house fire, a couple houses catch fire because of fireworks. Not the fireworks themselves, but the remains of fireworks. So some people don't use really great,
no, there's no doubt about that.
but like in our instance, my grandson has asthma, and he's had really bad problems just with the air quality the way it is.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody was doing that next door and it bothered him, our lot's big enough that I don't think I'd have to worry about it, but if it weren't,
Yeah.
I'd be really upset.
Breathing smoke, yeah,
You
that's never a good
mix
thing.
in adult beverages with that.
Yes.
Rumor has it that sometimes impairs our judgment.
Decision making goes in the tank.
Good
for
point.
sure,
A
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
people compare these to barbecue grilling, and they say, what's the difference? Well, barbecue, I'll fire it up, I'll throw on a slab of meat or vegetables for you vegetarians. It'll be done in 15 or 20 minutes. A fire pit where you're
Yeah.
burning wood, you go on for hours. And as Paul said, it's a social gathering place. It's not some place where it's outdoor stove, basically. So that can get into noise issues, and then,
Sure.
you get alcohol involved, and then are we still supposed to trust people's judgment to regulate, these flames?
Yeah, and my dad spent 25 years as a volunteer firefighter. He can tell you even grills cause their own set of issues too. In fact, I think Public Safety just posted something the other day. It's talking about don't grill on your patio, and the background was just melted vinyl siding, and it was a bad deal.
My neighbor did that.
Yeah. So
You learn the hard way on that.
there's a nice control element though to your grills too. You can just turn that propane off and you're done. You're right, unless you're splashing water on something before you go to bed, cause issues.
When there's alcohol involved, people have no common sense.
Yeah,
Most of the time.
it's certainly the two don't exist in the same realm all the time. That's for sure. Yeah. So that's my opening topic. Let's transition. Who's got something they just want to talk about what they love about the city?
I have an issue with fireworks
Okay.
more than fire pits.
Sure.
I don't understand why there has to be fireworks on Memorial Day for one thing. It's supposed to be a day of remembrance, not a day of fireworks.
They did actually. The state did now remove that from the list, and,
Oh, they
and we
did?
followed suit here.
Okay.
The state.
I thought that was on the list initially.
It was, yeah, it was. The initial list, the initial list, caused us all kinds of issues. To Ms. Morris's point, the very first 4th of July after they passed it. I like subtle
Give me something about this.
Yeah, there's a place for that on the highway where you want other drivers. Was it? Okay. But that initial list where it was 11 holidays, and then the day before and the day after, we caused us all sorts of issues. All of a sudden, it was the Wild Wild West. And so the state did pull back on it. Again, as soon as the state did, we did the same thing. We pulled back on it. So Memorial Day is now off that list.
Oh,
When did they do that?
That was last fall, I think it
They
was.
reduced it from 30 days to 12.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, no, they went on and Memorial Day.
For Memorial Day's supposed to be off the list now, though.
Well, they were.
Yeah.
Oh, you heard some this year?
Well, if the holidays off the corresponding.
Yeah, then the two, the day before, the day after.
Somebody
Yeah.
posted a list of handles, that's why
Yeah, so, Mr. Hunter said, they cut it down from 30 days between day of, day after, and, day before, down to 12, so it's just a handful of holidays, and then again, the adjoining days back and forth. It's still gonna be loud, it's still gonna be wild, still gonna be a pain to try to get 2 4-year-olds down to bed that night, but thankfully, it's less now than it used to be, for sure. Yeah, and to Miss Morris's point, the very first 4th of July we had this, somebody was firing them off, and then took all the remnants, threw them in the trash can next to the house,
Uh-oh.
and then we ended up having to respond to a house fire. Yeah, so
More than
again,
one.
being very careful with those, not just worrying about where they come down or where you're firing off at, but how you properly dispose of them is I mean, it's just good common sense, and hopefully alcohol doesn't push that out in people's minds there. So, yes, ma'am.
Well, I asked this on Facebook, and I don't know if you answered today or not, because I haven't been on it today, but, if not tonight, then sometime, could we have a discussion about DDA, the creation, the purpose, how it came about,
Sure.
how
We
it's
can.
regulated, who's in charge, what do we have to say about it, you know?
Okay.
that kind of-
I wasn't around when it was created, but yeah, we can talk about it. Is everyone familiar with the Downtown Development Authority?
A little bit.
Kind of what it does? Yeah, it's essentially it's a district that captures the businesses between Greenfields on 12 Mile down to Coolidge, takes a turn, heads south, and goes on Coolidge from 12 down to 11. So inside that area, those properties there's 2 things that kind of happen when you're inside a DDA district there. One, we assessed a DDA millage. It was originally 2 mills. It's been rolled back down now. I think it's like 1.7 and some other. I don't know. I don't have that one off the top of my head there. And then also, along with the DDA district, we have a tax increment financing district, or a TIF, as we usually refer to it as. And TIFs are complicated. But essentially, in like 1998, I think it was established. The property values in 1998 are frozen, and all the other taxing jurisdictions that formerly had oversight or taxing authority over there, essentially just tax on that value moving forward. And so in 1998, and these are just hypotheticals, if the value was, we'll oversimplify here, if it was $20. And the city and the county and the OCC and the Board of Education and all those other taxing jurisdictions, they essentially apply their tax rate to that $20. Now, as the property gains in value over, and thankfully since 1998 we've done just that, everything over and above that, those monies are captured by the TIF. And the TIF, that's their revenue stream. So they have the ability to then spend that within the district. Big oversimplification of TIF districts, but they can get pretty weighty at some times. So between the DDA millage and the TIF capture, our DDA is funded to the tune of about $270,000 a year, or something like that. It's less than 300 or so. So in that they're bound by law to spend those monies within the district for physical items. They're allowed to donate and support events as they come along, but that's essentially their charge moving forward. So.
Can you explain the overlay district proposed?
Now, the overlay district is separate than the DDA itself. So the Planning Commission had been working on a set of design standards to try to raise the aesthetics of the district itself. So create a nice looking district, one that's sustainable, one that can stand the test of time from a taste standpoint. That's the intent anyway. So they developed a set of guidelines, and they are just that. They're guidelines. And so what's being proposed right now is an overlay district with the same properties, same borders as the DDA and TIF district. They would be subject to those guidelines. So they would be any application for site plan review. I don't know if special land use applies, but it's mostly like site plan and things like that. As somebody is talking about what they want their building to look like, the facade to look like, window space, all that kind of fun stuff. they would first get reviewed, their proposal would get reviewed against those guidelines, and and there would be a document, set of recommendations that are supplied to the planning commission. The planning commission would take those and say, like, okay, all right, we'll see what you're recommending there. Well, maybe we'll take that recommendation, maybe we won't take that recommendation. And then they'll make a decision based on how the planning commission wants to move forward.
Sounds like an additional, branch of government.
Yeah, I think there's a case to be made. Right now, what was in the recommendation from planning commission and city council was a board basically gets tasked with that. Instead of having the planning commission, because the design guidelines are, I think depending on how you print them out, are like 140 pages long. And so instead of having the planning commission do that type of work and bog them down, the recommendation was have a separate board review those and develop a recommendation report to planning commission separately. And now a case can be made, though, you're creating another board in this process. One of the things that we've been talking about internally is whether a board needs to have it done or whether just that can be a staff function or a staff recommendation to the planning commission. Again, planning commission does what it wants with those recommendations, but
So would the board be required to be residents?
under the recommendation that was from the planning commission, that was not a requirement. That is always, of course, our hope and what we would want to recruit people for. But again, even with any kind of board, you're talking about having them, set up, advertise well in advance, and you have to get all those people together. You got to get a quorum. You got to get them all on the same page. That's why we're thinking perhaps a staff planner or a consultant can do this review, deliver it separate from there, so you don't end up with another whole level of bureaucracy.
So,
Doesn't Tim already do that?
Tim does to a certain extent. Tim doesn't have a background in planning, though.
All right.
So we are actually in the process of seeking community development director with a background in planning. So
That would do the review.
well, that can just basically do a lot of the things that a planner would do. Whereas Tim
So
doesn't.
then
Tim
why
doesn't.
would you want the overlay?
The staff planner would be able to produce that recommendation document. So
And you wouldn't need the overlay.
you wouldn't need. Well, you would still. It remains to be seen. You could still, if you're looking at expanding it out, then if we were interested in maybe if we like them enough that say we would like to apply some of these standards to Woodward, and then we can look at just basically applying the guidelines across the whole city. But right now, our DDA was interested in sort of trying to raise the aesthetics of its specific district first. And so they wanted to be the leader on that, as it were. So, but again, so where that stands right now, where that stands right now is Planning Commission worked through the process of making a recommendation for an addition to the zoning map, as well as adopting the design overlay zoning guidelines as it stands now. Next step would be for it to go to City Council. City Council would then review them, and they've got the option of accepting it or rejecting it, or sending it back to Planning Commission with notes, and having the Planning Commission work back through its process again.
Is
So
it my
with some
understanding
recommendations.
that the DDA director would all be the administrator along with your background in development, staff, for an awful lot of the administrative part of it?
Planning Commission looked at
Same one that's done the road diet fiasco?
Well, I know what you're trying to get at. So I know the Planning Commission addressed and really reduced the administrative approvals portion of it. They really felt it was appropriate for them to keep a lot of those decisions in hand. So that's been lessened.
Did that happen last night? I didn't.
No, I actually didn't get to catch the Planning Commission either. That was in their in the course of their conversation about the administrative approvals. They pared it back before they made the recommendation to council.
Did the planning commission feel like
Well, Miss Morris has been very politely waiting.
My concern about it is, have we had an influx of businesses trying to change things around that they actually need a whole new segment of government to take care of this? I mean, isn't the planning commission capable of doing this? I mean, it's been several years. I have so many questions. It's been what, 20 years now, at least, that they've been, since it's been created, at the DDA I'm talking about, and, so far, I haven't seen that kind of activity.
I kind of beg to differ with that. Just in the 16 years I've been here, there was a DDA, and it was all volunteer based, and they did the best they could with what they had. And then at the point where the funding could be made available for them to get a director, whether you like the person or not, when they got the director, activity started to happen, marketing started to happen, programs started to happen, the improvement to the facades of businesses started to happen. When I moved here 16 years ago from Farmington Hills, I mean, God bless our little city, but it did look very, very nice from a shopping perspective, from a downtown walkable perspective. We've made leaps and bounds in the last, I'd say, 5 to 8 years in improving the aesthetics. And I think sometimes you do need another layer if you want to take your city to another level. And sometimes it doesn't include, and we love the loyalty of having our police officers live here, and you live here, God bless you, to have to deal with everything 24/7. But there's a value to having people from other areas. If you own a business and you have a board of directors, you don't hire your employees to be board of directors. You don't hire your customers to be your board of directors. You hire people with expertise from all over the place to get a different perspective and to bring their expertise and their insight than the experiences they've had in other cities. And so I'm not intimidated by what you and the DDA are trying to do. I see it as they're trying to take Berkeley to the next level and improve the aesthetics, improve the walkability. I mean, look what they've done in the last 5 years. Flowers and activities, and would you all agree that Berkeley looks, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but Berkeley looks so much better now than it did 16 years ago.
I'll grant you that a lot of time was wasted by not having a lead dog in the harness.
Yeah.
And they did the best that they could do.
Mm-hmm.
My concern with the overlay board here is, first of all, is this a city board or is this a DDA thing?
This would be a city board. Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
this would be a city board. Applicants would go through council. They'd be appointed by council.
Then from my admittedly spotty memory, city boards have to have people who are members, are residents of the city.
Unless specified otherwise, like our construction board of appeals, they don't have a residency requirement. But you're right, most of our city boards do require residency for that. You're absolutely correct about that.
How about a percentage that there needs to be a certain percentage that are residents?
Why not have residents?
That's not in the current form, but again, like I say, council hasn't taken this up yet, and any portion of this could be subject to change.
Yeah.
Again, we may not even end up with a board making that recommendation, but perhaps, like I say, a staff planner or a consultant, somebody like that would be the one rendering the decision. But the important part is it goes to the resident. This board, again, they're advisory only. So they would make nothing more than a set of recommendation and guidelines to the resident planning commission, who then would make the decision on what's best for the community that they live in.
If they don't have any teeth to enforce the recommendation, what's the sense of having them?
These are just recommendations. These have no teeth. They're not standards. The planning commission can say that's nice, but that's not the direction we think is best for this particular building. So it is merely a recommending board.
Seems like it's just another layer of bureaucracy
Government, yeah.
to get in the way.
Yeah.
And you know what? Why pit residents against businesses by not having a board? I mean, if you're going to create a board.
No, at no point are they going to be pitted against one another.
Well, it would
This
if
body
it's
works
not
in harmony
made up
with.
of residents.
Well,
That's
this
my-
body, they work in. I mean, to that extent, you could say the planning commission then is works in businesses. They make the planning commission, the council, this board, if we end up forming it, they're looking to see what's best for the city itself. So if somebody comes in and say they're a business or something like that, and they want to create something that runs contrary to our standards, our traditions, any bit of it, that still they have to make a case for why this is the way to go to the planning commission and sometimes to the city council, depending on the situation may be. So I don't see it as being anybody pitting against one another. It's this board enforces standards.
They have competing interests. Like, I'm sorry, Wendy, she doesn't like people parking in front of her house, and I don't blame her. I wouldn't either. I wouldn't want my street car to car to car to car all up and down the street. But for business purposes, they like that because that decreases the amount of parking lots they have to buy. It's competing interests, I think.
But then I would say it's in that case it's not all that different than the current role of the planning commission and the current role of the city council as far as like special land uses and variances and stuff go, or the ZBA as far as variances go. Yeah, I would say that's maybe competing interests, but we're not trying to pit residents against businesses in that regard. We've got standards you need to apply to them, or we need to adhere to them. So I don't see it as that adversarial.
Can't you do what they do in Royal Oak? You can't park anywhere on the street in Royal Oak almost anymore. Put permit signs, you have to have a permit to park on your house in Royal Oak.
We've looked at permit parking in a couple different spots, yeah. Logistically,
Especially along, we're like, this garage that's been for quite a while.
yeah, if instead of garage been an issue, yeah, we're actually in litigation with
I
instead of
understand,
garage.
I wouldn't want a little car parked in front of my house all the time. I mean, it's all right if somebody's having a party, but on continuous, that would bother me too.
This is a perfect example of where administrative approval does not work.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
I mean,
that's probably a case we made there, yeah.
the planning commission was totally left out of that parking situation.
Well, when it did come to the planning commission though, as far as the zoning changes and the site plan reviews and things like that, along that process too, they decided that, this wasn't a great option. It came for council. Again, not a great option, and right now we're in litigation over it. So there is no foolproof, but in that situation there, with the way that they applied and what they applied under, with the shared parking agreements, yeah, you're right, it did not pan out. Our minimums didn't work in that situation because they ended up being so popular.
Okay, so the planning commission has established these set of guidelines. Those are the rules. I, as a business owner, potential business owner, come in and I want to do something. So I present my plans to the planning department. They try to review them, whether it's reviewed there or this overlay design district. And then they write the report, turn it into the planning commission, and the planning commission says yay or nay.
Or yes and no, even at a line level. So
Okay.
are the recommendations like yes, no,
Okay.
maybe.
But, that being said, you as a city, we as a city are also looking at hiring an expertise person to do that, then you would not need this overlay district.
Yeah, I think there's a potential there, absolutely. Yeah. So it's a conversation that we've yet to have,
Okay.
but you've crystallized it very well.
Okay.
Is whether it comes down to the need for that, a full board or
But
an
it's-
individual.
But it always has to go back to the planning
Yes, ma'am.
commission, other than what's this $500 rule going on? If it's under a certain amount or something, it doesn't have to or no?
Oh, I think that's square footage. There's, if
Okay.
somebody makes, so the area where that planning commission kind of shrunk the administrative approval down to is if it's square footage or if it's like a percentage of a facade.
Then
If
they
they're,
don't have
yeah,
to.
if they're changing like 25% of a facade, it's not whole scale, but even then though, your community development director, your building official, whoever it would be, can say, even within this 25 feet, this is changing the character of this, we're still gonna elevate this to planning commission review. Mr. Terrell, you've been pretty patient, sorry about that.
Thank you. Well, just to clarify a couple of things. The DDA director and the chair of the planning commission both testified before council. that-
Never heard it say this, testified.
Well,
Well,
Sounds so official.
that's what they did.
They agree.
Well, it's on tape.
Well,
Yeah.
but they both said that they're not guidelines, that they're mandates, and that the advisory board is truly a review board, and if it does not meet the review board, it does not pass along. That's what they both
Right,
said.
where planning commission got to, it's not gonna be, the ordinance doesn't still read in that way. So these truly are recommendations. Planning commission absolutely has the ability to say,
Well,
we
planning
accept or
commission,
deny.
planning commission can always override, you're absolutely right, but it may not ever get to the planning commission. If the review board says no, it doesn't get to the planning commission.
No, they were still, author reports.
According to what the chair of the planning commission said,
But remember, we've gone through an entire process since they've been in front of council and the planning commission has made changes and alterations and talked through how they want to see this apply. But you're right, when we started talking this conversation last year sometime, where we started from and where we ended up, from a planning commission standpoint, they were different. So the review board, or the whoever's rendering the report, I guess we should say it like that at this point, their recommendations go to planning commission, even if they say everything about this is no good. That report still has to accompany the application to the planning commission. The planning commission ultimately makes the decision of whether or not to go with it or not go with it. Planning commission still does have, they've not foregone any power, as it were. They've not foregone anything
but
like
if
that.
it never gets to the planning commission, they never get to see it. So.
Well, that would be the applicant's decision. If the applicant decides to review it,
If the review board says no, then it doesn't pass.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, Mr. Terrell. That's not the way that this system's been built.
And if I could address, there have been other DDA directors before the current one. The 12-mile streetscape work was done under a previous DDA director.
That wasn't a paid position though, was it?
Yes.
They have not had one since 2007 before the current one
Right.
joined.
Right,
That was back- yeah.
but it wasn't paid.
That's,
Right.
that's all, what we're
It was a
looking at.
paid, it was a paid position. They did an okay job. There was some stuff, I was on tree board then, there was some stuff that we disagreed with. But look at, you're absolutely right about the businesses that have grown and redone things. The wedding shop, Folio, chemistry salon, you look at a lot of them, they've all done it, but they've done it under the current zoning, the current codes, and under the current review process. It works. And it's done very,
I don't think we
It's
should-
the marketing of the community, and then
Yeah.
I don't want to give all the credit to the EDA, it's our school system, it's our
Yeah.
amazing positive speaking, positive promoting residents, it's our government. Yeah, I throw, they must think I have a crush on you or something.
My wife's starting to talk, actually.
You are, from what we had, you're flippin' amazing, and I worked voluntarily under the other city manager, and I'll tell you something, night and day difference. I am so thankful for this man and his level head and the way you communicate with our community, both on the business end and on the residential end. But anyway, I think in the last 5 years, there's been tremendous strides, and it's all because of everything being pulled together. And I have to give credit to the DDA and the chamber for doing amazing work in promoting.
the chamber is incredible.
Right,
The job that they
exactly,
do.
and so all I want to say is, I know we want to be careful, because when you go blindly and just let the government, any government, do anything without the residents' approval or the residents overseeing it, so I get and understand and appreciate the questions. I just want to be careful that we don't split hairs and bring up the past, when right now what we've got going forward is a wonderful thing, and let's keep moving in that positive direction. It does need residential oversight, I
Yep.
totally get it,
Yep.
but we have to be careful that on social media that we don't berate this amazing government body that we have right now and the community that we have. It's getting to the point, I'm going to preach it a little bit just for a second, because you opened up the preacher's box. I've got to the point that the social media environment has gotten me, as much as I love this city and love everything about it, I've backed away from so many of the Berkeley sites because of the nitpicking, hair-splitting, critical comments that are on there. It's so disheartening to me. So that's why I'm sitting here, is I would rather listen to you and listen to my other fellow residents face to face than the keyboard that are going on.
Okay, well, I got an interesting point here, because I came here to listen to you talk, and now I gotta listen to negativity.
I didn't
So,
hear any.
I heard negativity talking about, social media and Berkeley groups. I mean, why can't we just keep this positive and talk about the good work that you do?
Absolutely.
And they, but yet I gotta listen
Well,
to
no,
that.
I don't want to turn that into. I don't want to turn this into
So,
Facebook in person.
my point was, is because I don't agree with her, I can see what she's saying is negative.
No,
If you
Kurt, I
agree
think
with it, you'll
Kurt,
see what's positive.
I think
Social
she
media can
was.
serve a purpose, and it can be positive. But if you don't agree with it, you just wanna shut it out, and you wanna label it, that's what you're gonna do, and that's your choice.
Right, but I don't think she was going after any individual here.
Oh, I
think
know
she's
what you're going
commenting
after,
on
but
the.
I appreciate it.
Knowing
I
Bridget,
just
knowing
meant
Bridget, I don't believe she's the
you
type.
were using that as an example of.
Exactly.
It's
Thank
the way
you.
that-
And you know what, and I'll give you credit for bringing that up. I'm using that as my point, that there is so many wonderful things in this city, so many.
And I agree with
And
you.
there's so many beautiful things in the city, beautiful people.
Yeah. And so Facebook and social media, they do a lot of really good things. What I found in my experience so far with Facebook and going back, I don't know, I've been on like 15 years, whenever it started there. It's difficult to have a policy conversation about on Facebook. Sometimes you do see it end up delving into or devolving into like, I don't like this person, and therefore what this person says is something I don't like. But to your point, Mr. Terrell, we've got some fantastic examples of things that have gone really, really well under our current system. But it doesn't prohibit us from having a conversation about what could or could not be better about our system, where the potential to improve might still exist. And that's really what we want to be able to do is.
Absolutely, but also allow for the fact that many of us don't agree that the overlay is the way to do that.
Yeah,
I mean,
That's-
there is,
that's perfectly
to
reasonable.
throw the baby out with the bathwater and dump the overlay on top. There's a lot of people, and I've listened to a lot of people who know more about such things than I, who said, you don't need to do a whole lot of tweaking to the code to bring things up to where it could be self-sustaining without the additional board, without the additional mandates, without all the other stuff that the overlay would throw in. And then if you update the codes, it's going to be universal. Everybody's got to deal with it, not just 2 miles.
Yeah.
Then 11 miles got to do it, Woodward's got to do it, Greenfield's got to do it. So everybody's got to do it. I mean, that's another problem that I've got with the overlay, is that it's not universal, that you're going to hold different businesses to different standards just because of their location.
Well, but that's not without precedent either, though. That's kind of the basis of zoning in general, is we set up zoning districts and areas, and if your property happens to fall within those, there are often different standards,
But
what
2
it looks
miles-
like, what could go in there.
Right, 2 miles for a DDA is excessive, and an overlay is generally considered to be much smaller than a DDA district. It's usually dealing with historical areas, with things like certain parks or wetlands, water, wooded areas, that you're trying to do some preservation and maintaining those.
Yeah, those are all examples.
Those are usual examples of an overlay. I mean, I'm not a big one, but I have never seen an overlay as large as what they're considering.
Oh, they're out there. I mean, there's plenty of examples.
Well,
Maybe.
there probably is out there,
2
but
square miles.
yeah.
Do you mind if I ask
Yeah.
a question? And this sort of goes along with this. I agree with him. I agree that it's way too large. And when the DDA started out, it was a very small area on 12 Mile, which seems totally appropriate.
And I've heard that repeated a couple of times as of late, but I don't see the basis for that. It looks like it was all established at the same time. It's all got the same base year.
I'm sure it goes back to the 1950s
Oh,
because that was the
1988.
district.
Yeah.
Well, even you go back further than that, that was the shopping district.
Yeah.
from Tyler to Wakefield on 12
Yeah,
mile.
there's a visible
And
change.
that was the
Yeah,
very
DDA.
visible.
yeah.
That was the DDA, that's how
Yes.
it started out.
Yes.
And I was gonna ask you when and why was it expanded to include all of our, our two major arteries?
Yeah. See, and it's all got, that's what I was, I saw that on Facebook, so I went kind of examining some of our documentation, and it all looks like it all has the same base year. And so typically what you would see with an expanded district would be like an initial base year and an expanded base year. And I don't see I don't see where that happened since 1998. It looks like it was all done at this particular district was all set up at the same time in 98. Again, wasn't here during that, and so I'm not sure kind of what happened at that point. I'm only left with the historical stuff to review there.
And I don't think that's how it was sold.
I'll say this, not liking to use the word overlay, but in conjunction with the marketing, yes, it has come full circle. And if nothing else, this review board would be able to say, that's within our plan, that's within our marketing plan.
Start small, like maybe expanding it out if it's
Well,
successful.
if the DDA knows what they're marketing and where they want to go with it, they know. Somebody, a business comes in and wants to do something totally different with the front of that building, the DDA can say, no, it's not the look that we're looking for.
They can say that.
We would like you
Yeah.
to do this,
Yeah.
as long as it's within the guidelines.
Yeah, but even then, those are the planning commission could come in and when the application actually comes to them, say,
Yeah,
you
well,
know what,
we don't care.
you know what, we like this or this has merit to it. Even if the DDA says, we don't really like it, planning commission's a city function. It's not a DDA board, so they are fully well within their right and empowered to approve things that may not even come with a recommendation from the DDA or the DDA board.
I'd like to bring up a couple things that we can talk about that.
Sure.
One thing, the new striping on Coolidge, I'm a biker, but I wouldn't bike on that green bike path there. For one thing, it's dangerous, because you can get doored by a car, somebody opening their car door.
Yeah.
I knew somebody that got doored in New York and it wasn't a good result.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
So, and the other thing, the bike lane ends before you get to the intersection. What are you supposed to do, stop there?
So they're not done with the striping, but yes, you're right. It does. When you get to the intersection, you're right. They don't want you riding right through there. So that there's taper lines that are supposed to go in. I need a
Okay.
dry stretch here.
So then
They're supposed to
after-
get you to off to the side there.
Okay,
But,
so after you cross the intersection then, there's gonna be cyclists going on Coolidge north of 12 Mile.
Mhm.
So there should be some marking there like Charles or a bike picture on the road or something.
Yeah.
To let people know that there's gonna be bikes there.
Yes,
Because I see
I don't
people
disagree.
speeding up and down there all the time in cars, they use it as a drag strip because my block backs up to Coolidge.
Yeah.
And I see bikes going up and down there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's gonna be a big problem, especially if people are using those bike lanes on Coolidge.
And if we get to a point where we're talking about the current configuration as being a permanent thing, then absolutely I think we should look at swapping the park lane with the bike lane, and then having like maybe a protected bike lane if we do it that way. Or say if the interest isn't there, and I've seen some people on there, but not a
Well,
ton
I
of
can
people.
get to where I'm
then-
going, there's so many residential streets around here, I just bike on the residential
Yeah.
streets and.
Well, I do the same. Like I say, I'm usually biking with my kids, and
Yeah.
I wouldn't tow them on a busy street. I don't like towing them on Catalpa.
No,
So yeah.
I'm not a biker on Catalpa either,
Yeah.
I just go over a block and I'm supposed to be on a bike ride, it's that exercise, so you go an extra block, who cares?
Sure.
We have bike routes.
Yeah, we do.
And the other thing is, do we have a dog park in the city?
That's been talked about for a very long time, yeah. They've even talked about basically fencing this park in half. And, there was a Ron, I don't remember his Ron last name, but he had talked about, hey, let's just take the back half of Jaycee and make it into a dog park. We run into issues with the infrastructure and maintenance as of right now, being able to put the resources into it. So we've looked at it, I know at least twice since I've been here,
Oh,
and
yeah?
Parks and Rec has looked at it more times than that.
Well, they're redoing some of the, over by the Civic Center, I don't know if they're gonna put one in there somewhere.
That, and we talked about with the arena coming down,
Right.
we'll have a big open area too, and whether or not there's potential for there is an open conversation.
Because I know I go to 13
I
in
know.
Quiver now, and that's a little drive, but and
Yeah.
there's so many people with dogs around here.
Right.
it'd be
Is that the
nice
Red
to-
Run Park?
Yeah.
I've heard really good things about that. Yeah, I don't have a dog myself, but I've heard good
It's not
things.
as good as the Lake Orion one, but
No?
that's the Cadillac of dogs.
Carrie, you've been patient.
But,
I'm sorry.
but it's closer to home, but
Sure.
there's, you know, it's 5 to 6 miles driving over there. I could, for the two, I could walk up here.
Yeah.
And the thing is about a community dog park, you like to see the same dogs there all the time. You never see, I hardly ever see the same dogs twice at Red Run because people come from all over the place.
Okay.
You could charge a yearly fee.
Yeah,
Make a
I
little
think
bit of
that is
money.
essentially what it would come down to from a financing model would be, it'd
You
be
know.
some sort of annual or monthly
And
subscription.
you're liable to see the same dogs there, so your dogs can kind of have friends and people walk there.
Yeah.
It's more of a community thing.
Yeah, and my father-in-law enjoys his. He uses one in Livonia, around the corner from where he lives. Really likes it. It's a social thing for him. He's in his 70s. He likes not only to have his dog see other dogs, but he enjoys the camaraderie of dog owners.
Right.
A lot of positives to it for sure.
Okay, you know, I just wanted to say, it's good to hear that if the bike lanes do become permanent, I would like to see that they become a protected bike lane.
To the interior.
Yes,
Yeah.
the interior,
Yeah.
because that's proven it's 90% safer than how they're set up right now. As far as the dog park, I hope if you gotta do something, if you do it more on a temporary basis and have somebody that you have designated that's gonna go by and check it, because I don't have a dog, but I've heard the stories about certain people live in certain lots where, and I'm not saying it's everybody, I see a lot of great owners that pick up after their dogs. And you hear a lot of complaints on social media about there's certain yards that get the brunt of everything because they're in a certain position, whether they're on a way to a park or whatever.
Yeah.
And they go out and have to clean up with a shovel and get bags full. So I just worry that there might be some great owners and then there might be a bunch of not so great, and if the park is not being cleaned up, it's gonna be more of a biohazard.
Yeah,
instead of
and
a-
this ends up being part of our logistical issues with this is, talk about, who's gonna enforce it. Going back to even our backyard chimney things. Not everybody's responsible.
Right.
Not everybody does the right thing. They're gonna see this as, pardon the turn of phrase,
Most
the
of the
dumping
people at Red
ground.
Run do pick up after
But my
their
main
dogs.
point is I wanted to get to is with the DDA design overlay and with the design guidelines themselves, I'm kind of in a weird spot as far as, I love a lot of the guidelines that are actually in there. If you look at them, they actually put forth a lot of responsible ways that development can happen at the end caps of blocks on major streets and protect the important aspect, which is the single-family residential areas. So I really do believe that it would be a great thing if a lot of those things were adopted into our current zoning ordinances. My concern that it's not being done that way and that you are creating the design board, if that's what it's called, and you're kind of adding an extra layer of bureaucracy where they're trying to say they're streamlining, but they're adding one more thing that's it's another hurdle that's got to happen before it can go to either be an administrative meeting or to the planning commission.
And that's kind of where I was getting at earlier with, scheduling these meetings. Like, you need time in between there to get the proper
Right.
notification and all that stuff out. So, say you've got a design review board meeting that they look at it and that's great, but there's a lot of guidelines here, and we only got through a part of them that night. We
Yeah.
need to schedule another meeting. Hopefully, you get all those people back together, and you have to do it. Essentially, you're calling an emergency meeting for the next night on 18 hours notice. It's just not gonna feel transparent,
Right.
And so you're essentially, you should give it more time and more space.
Yep.
I really, one of my concerns is that, well, what if that ends up, if planning commission says, we'll take the application, we'll review it, but I want to postpone until I get the report. And then now, you've added 30 days to a process now.
Right.
And that's really what I don't
And
want to see.
that's where I was going with it, because it's not, a lot of people aren't necessarily against what's in the guidelines themselves.
It's just how you administer them.
And they're worried about how certain things have been handled, and recent things have been handled administratively. Like even Lulu, what do you, what's it?
Students lose?
Yeah, that should have come before the planning commission. The planning commission even told Tim that should have been, because they did 100% of the facade. and and Tim was not, he was concerned, well, the back one was done, and nobody was concerned about the back one. It was, they had done the whole thing, and Marty even told them that should have come before us. That is the main concern with the administrative, adding more administrative approval over what's already there, because it's already known that when you look at Vincetta and the problems that that's caused, and then with this other one, it should have come before planning commission, they probably would have approved it. I'm not saying that it looks bad, and I'm not saying that I think it's a great company.
Well, we may have had this conversation before you got here, but we talked about, actually, planning commission took action to reduce and clarify administrative approvals down to 25%.
In the guidelines,
now.
but still, again, that all requires the person that makes that decision to do the math, not have creative skills when it comes to math, because Tim was considering 25% to be one thing, and the planning commission considered it to be another thing, and what they weren't meeting together.
Yeah, so
but my last thing about the
clarified
DD, and I'm sorry for taking so long, and then I'm done. I was concerned with the most recent council thing, when you guys made an agreement to pay for if you decide to revert the road diet. Because I've heard it over the last few months, there was talk at the DDA, if you read the minutes, where they're talking about expending a lot of their reserve cash, which was a substantial amount, and I think it was enough to pay for the road diet and to revert it. I mean, it seemed like a high dollar amount, and it just concerned me that because I thought you were actually on the DDA, and so is Steve Baker. So to me, I felt that somebody should have said, well, you're talking about expending this cash. Why don't you just set this cash aside, and then you have the money to pay for the road diet and to revert it, rather than the city taking the money that the residents are paying in for infrastructure repair and loaning it to them and having it paid back over 2 years. It just didn't make sense that we're constantly shuffling back and forth when they have the money that they're talking about expending. And to me, I felt that somebody should have said, no, you know what, we have the money right here, let's just use that money for the road diet. That's all I felt. And also as far as Robina and Robina and Griffith, north and south of 12 Mile, the sidewalks being so wavy, that could have been money they could have used that for as well.
And still could, I'd say they still have a fund balance enough to address that, and that's part of the downtown master plan that that process they've been working through, is to address things like that. That's definitely a near-term thing, that crushed, that exposed aggregate planters and all that stuff, just sprucing that up. It definitely has an age to look to at this point. But I actually, funny story, until I started working here, I was a frequent visitor of Berkeley, and I always noticed the shoe repair store was right there. I kind of thought the uneven sidewalks were just a ploy to get people into the shoe repair place. I was like, that's pretty smart. That's a community that supports its businesses right there. But no, they have, like, we need to get those flattened out, and I know my kids, my wife does Pilates there at Performing Foundation, so we walk up there all the time, and my two little left-feeted twins there, they're always tripping over stuff. So that's absolutely a place that needs to be addressed. North and south is a problem. Not just the waviness, but the aesthetics as well. It has an older look to it, for sure.
You mentioned to look clear, however you say it. And I only have one question, because I wonder every time I drive by, why are they allowed in that should be continuing?
They're not. They've since been, we've gotten at least one of them out of there now.
What was the question?
The shipping containers at Tuning Tulu's.
Oh.
Yeah, we've been talking about that as well. So they're out of there. At least one of them's out of there now. The red one's out of there now.
The one that's behind is still
Yeah, the one that's stuck behind there. So they're not. They're just looking for someone to come pick them up. They found it much easier to have it delivered than to have it taken away.
That's gone.
They need to go. So we've got one of them taken away. The other one should be out there
That's
too.
a violation.
It's fine. We're not class.
When you're talking about the DDA loaning the money to put this road back and everything, is that an interest-free loan, or are they going to pay?
I'll have to look with our auditors. We may be required to do some amounts of, like, apply some amount of interest to that, but it's going to be, we'll have that worked out with the auditors if we get to that point. Because I do know I've been with other communities that have done, like, inter-fund loans, and there was a requirement for interest to be assessed to it, but it was somewhat low rate at the time. It was, I forget the terminology for it, but there's likely not going to be a 0%. There'll be some amount of money to it.
Is it up to the
Interest.
council?
No, it's more or less up to the what we call GAAP. It's generally accepted accounting principles, and so there's a board for governmental accounting called GASB. It's Governmental Accounting Standards Board. It will essentially be working with GAAP and with whatever the guidelines that GASB has laid out on us. So we'll have to apply those.
I'm
That's what, but to answer your question, the simplest way, no, not a 0% loan.
All right, now the overlay thing. You said we've been discussing and we're changing this and we're talking about that. Who's we and where and when have they been talking about it?
So planning commission went through a pretty, I don't know, several months of discussing kind of the best way to apply this. And then at the staff level, we've been having conversations as well about if there's a different or better way to apply these. So
Is it up to staff?
no, it ultimately goes down to, this is an ordinance recommendation, so ultimately it goes to city council for adoption. So, but we'll make, like I say, I make it my practice to make recommendations to city council. That's part of my role as manager. Make recommendations to city council, and one of those recommendations that we're discussing internally amongst staff would be actually asking, make a recommendation to city council that they ask planning commission to remove the board and have it administered through, again, a consultant or a staff planner, doing it that way instead. But again, that's just part of our role as staff members, is to make recommendations to council.
I'm sorry, what did you just say about
We lost it in the airplane.
Oh, sorry. Between motorcycles and airplanes, we got a big night here tonight. So one of the things that we've been talking about internally is, as far as putting the design review guidelines into effect, is instead of having a board render those recommendations, have either a planning consultant or a staff planner. And I think there's a case to be made that would help us actually be more consistent with the thought of streamlining this. So you could have somebody, sit down and do all those and still render a report to our planning commission. To the planning commission, it's essentially no change. No matter what, they're getting a set of recommendations on the design guidelines. We're just having an internal conversation about whether or not it's appropriate to have a board do that or have an individual tasked with it. So we kind of covered that earlier.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, Mr.
I have
Bransky.
2 things.
Okay, and then Mr. Bransky, it's your turn.
Based on what you just said and everything, I would expect that this won't go to council for maybe at least a couple months. Now, am I wrong?
I don't have a tentative date yet. Yeah, right now it's kind of in my office. I've got like columns for each of the next couple of council meetings, just kind of charting down what I think is slated to go. Based on staff conversations again, I've kind of got it in like a 4th column of not quite ready to go yet kind of thing. So I don't have a tentative date yet, but you're probably right, a month or 2 away.
So residents will have a fairly decent heads up before it goes to council.
Sure. Yeah, I don't want to drop anything on people. Like I said, that's why we've tried to get more things out sooner and to have more productive conversations on the front end instead of just waiting and dropping things out on, right on top of the meetings.
Okay, I have another question. I totally
That's fine. While you're thinking about it, Mr. Bransky?
Yeah, I have one more question about the DDA. Chemical Salon just opened up. Do they have a parking agreement with Berkeley First?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Zach Dunlap, the pastor, said they did it next month.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have that information on the top of my head. I can, if you want to shoot me an email, I'll find out for you. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a comment and a question. My comment is about social media and what's been said so far. And I'm Bridget Dean, I'm on the Berkeley City Council, and I personally, my issue with social media is that things are misconstrued, they're read a certain way, tone and inflection are inferred, and they may or may not be there. I would prefer, if anyone wants to have a conversation with me, I own the knitting store in Robina, I am easily accessible. My cell phone number is on the bottom of my city email, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who is interested in having it. I would rather sit down and engage in civil discourse with residents than to be, a lot of this back and forth and nothing gets accomplished. Because I think there's an element of communication that's missing when you're posting things. Kurt has been to my knit shop. We've had many conversations there and other places. And I think that while we don't always agree on every single thing, we respect one another and we listen to one another. And I know that when I've spoken with him, he's shown me a different way to look at things. And hopefully I've done the same to him. It's, sometimes when you're just in your space and you don't entertain another point of view, or you're not willing to listen to another point of view, then where are you? Then you're stuck. And I hope that I'm continuously learning and continuously growing and looking at things in a different way. And absolutely, I could change my mind on things. That's, our right as human beings to, when you know better, you do better. When you know more, then perhaps you might look at something differently. That's my comment. My question is about the DDA, and you were talking about the TIF, and in the DDA district, how they kept, and I know the TIF is complicated because I'm trying to discern a lot of it myself. But when they get that tax capture, are they or are they not mandated to spend that money in certain ways?
Yes.
For example, okay. And so they have a balance, and could they, if they wanted to, like, you know what, we want to throw X amount of dollars toward a road repavement or some infrastructure project. Could they do that, or is that outside?
Within the district, they can do it.
Okay.
They can't, that's
They
a good
can't do
example
it
of what they couldn't
without.
do outside the district.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're bounded by the district and certain stipulations
Right,
within that.
right, right.
Okay, thank you.
And so the nice thing about a TIF district is, it does capture some of the city's capture as well, but what it also does is tax dollars that, like, for the county and for the school district, and open intermediate district and open parks, and all the places outside that would normally be leaving Berkeley to go somewhere else, at least we're keeping that in the community. It's specific to the
Yes.
district, of course.
Yes.
But it's monies that otherwise wouldn't be available to be invested anywhere in the city.
So that's a perk of
So
having
that's
a
one of
DDA.
the selling
Essentially.
points. Yeah, that's one of the, when we talk about the positives of a TIF, that's one of the things that we talk about. That's a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
So with the infrastructure thing that we just passed, a percentage of that, does the DDA keep that percentage?
Yes. So the way the
Are
TIF,
they obligated like the rest of the city is to only spend the money that was
specific to infrastructure.
specific to infrastructure?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not that, okay, we can plant flowers.
Right. That's a good example. You can't take infrastructure dollars and make it flower pots or something like that. Yeah. So it'd be physical investments into the district itself.
Wait, you're saying that DDA's capture of what we voted on, that increase in millage, must be spent on infrastructure?
Yes, they
You're
have
saying-
to. Yes, they have to. The millage, the charter amendment, which is essentially what that millage vote was. The charter, that money has a very specific purpose that has to be honored. Whether it's the city proper or the DDA. Now we've been discussing with them the DDA a way for them to basically essentially hand it back over to the city to be invested in infrastructure elsewhere. The need to spending in the district is what gets a little bit ticky on that. But they could essentially earmark, it's probably about $21,000 or so, depending on what they actually get by the time we rectify with the county. But they could take that $21,000 and do specific infrastructure improvements there, whether it's sidewalks at Robina or I'm not sure what else you do with $21,000 or so, but that'd be a good example. You could do sidewalk replacements or things like that.
Okay, so now Ms. Carmody has been quoted as saying that they could use the money however she wants them to.
Yeah, she was misspeaking there. That's not accurate.
Okay, another thing, she told me directly, it's not hearsay, that she and Tim were in negotiations with that property owner who went to ZBA, was denied a rezoning of that property that backs up to the business section.
You're talking about Cummings.
I don't,
Yes,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
I
not
don't know
Cummings.
the
Yeah.
street
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
They
Behind the
denied
Bell
the
Hospital.
ZBA because it's been zone parking.
Right, right.
And they were denied.
Yes.
She and Tim were in discussions with this property owner to give, I don't know how they were gonna transfer property, but 20 feet to the city in some fashion. and they would let him do whatever he wanted to do on the rest of the property. Now, where does she get
No,
the
no, well,
authority?
so let me clarify on that. So, yes, they have 60 feet of property there. There's kind of a little carve out there, directly behind what is now Teachable Moments. And there's a 20-foot strip of parking there. The next 20 feet is attached to that. It's a residential property because there's a house on there, but it's zoned P1. So yes, it's not Vivian just doing it. We've all been talking about this as a potential fix. That area between it's Cummings and I'm blanking on my next street over, but Thomas, thank you so much. So between Cummings and Thomas, that area is a hodgepodge of like parking basically. And so when the doll hospital sold, remember they used to have their play structures there? So that in total is about 60 feet or so of property, which really right now is not particularly usable to them because of where the alleyway is.
With the house on it?
No, that's the next one south.
Downtown.
This is where they used to have their play structures that
That's a
were
back
displayed
next to
that
the
you can
adult.
actually build on.
Yeah, well, what's the 60 feet?
Yeah, so 60 feet is from the edge of the alleyway at the back of the building all the way to the edge of their property. So the privately owned portion is 40 feet. And so he's got 20 feet worth, but you can't really do anything with the next 20 feet because it's inaccessible based on how you would draw out cars. So what we're talking about doing, and hopefully we're able to do this, is across a couple of different property owners, we can assemble an actual parking area for the West 12 section that would be publicly owned, publicly maintained, and would essentially have benefits to each of the businesses there. But in order to do that, there's four different property owners that would all have to agree to this and then basically grant us their land in some way or fashion so that we can make that improvement. That is one of the properties there. The second part of that, the idea that he can just go do whatever he wants with, is not accurate at all. If he were to do this, split it up, he's still left with a 40-foot buildable lot that he could go back and apply for a rezoning for with a stronger case, because that's been zoned parking in order to create a parking lot there was the long-term vision. If that is happening elsewhere, his pitch or his application here is that we've satisfied the intent of keeping my parcel zone in P1 by satisfying that need. We've filled it now. Please let me do the remainder 40 feet. Please let me construct a new home on it, because the home there, it's in poor condition. So he would not do whatever he wants, but that would just make his case for applying for a rezoning to council stronger, because again, the need has been satisfied. The need that has kept him a P1 zoned property has been satisfied.
That first house on Thomas,
Yes, ma'am.
is that also P1 district?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
Okay. But you mentioned 4 lots, so is it the first 2 lots?
No,
of the
so
12 mile?
it's not like 4 lots deep.
Okay.
It's
2 and
the
2?
existing part that's
Okay.
there. It's kind of hodgepodge of little 20-foot strips.
Okay,
That's why there's 4 property owners, because when Doll Hospital sold, they sold to 2 different people.
okay.
One of them still has Jack's name, who owned the Doll Hospital.
Eric.
And yes, and then again, the other part is I forget the gentleman's name. I remember the company was Apex, but that's the last 20 feet of it. So if we were to do that now, so we would then, that's where the 60 feet comes from. We would have assembled 60 feet, which you can get 2 rows of parking on. So you would be able to add a lot of parking there. And
The planning commission, when they did this, you don't think that they wanted that whole lot to be parking? I mean, is that the contention?
which whole lot? The whole
Well,
house,
it-
the whole
a
60 feet?
60-foot lot, there's 60-foot
Yeah,
lots, right?
right.
And you're suggesting
This
that
lot
they
is 60
split it,
feet, yeah.
20 and 40.
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
So they have a buildable lot, 40 feet.
Right.
Then you would then have to go to, the planning commission to ask to have it rezoned
Mhm.
back to residential.
Right.
But when they rezoned it to parking, you don't think that they intended for all of that lot to be parking?
I'm assuming that, yeah. I absolutely assume that was the issue,
This
yeah.
was done back in 1986.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So instead of having it go deep into the neighborhood there, we might be able to satisfy the same need by going across. And holding the line between residential and zoning.
Aren't the adjacent lots also zone parking?
The next two out are the one that she just mentioned on Thomas,
Thomas.
and then again this one on
Can't
Cummings.
they do the same on Elwood too, the first
I
house? on
apologize, I would
each
have to look and see. I
lot?
know
Yeah,
they've
thought it
done
went
this a couple
from
times,
Cummings
yeah.
all the way to Greenfield.
Well, I applaud their foresight for doing that some 35 years ago,
Yeah.
because this west part of town, 12 Mile,
Has no parking.
west of here, it used to be such a vibrant area. I grew up on this street. Now, it's dead.
Yeah.
And, you
It's-
know, we like to welcome as residents to new business. I know there are concerns that need to be met, but something needs to be done in this west end of town. And
Yeah.
I understand it's out of the DDA.
It depends.
Oh, it's in the DDA?
It's in the DDA, all the way up to Greenfield. And so, one of the reasons why the DDA is involved in this is they would essentially be a funding partner on getting this done. But you're right. I'm not a huge fan of parking as a use, but this would be a shot in the arm. This would make a lot of those places relevant again. And if they don't have to provide it on their own lot, and if they don't have to see people parking up and down a side street, we can do this in a contained fashion, then yeah, it's worth having the conversation on. It's worth seeing if this is even feasible for us, which is, again, why we're having the conversation.
When that house was put up for sale, did the city get a chance to?
No, I don't recall anybody approaching us on it, no. And again, I think a case can be made that we should essentially be any parcel next to a commercial area, we should be looking at to purchase. My only counter to that is, again, logistically, if we start doing that, then you run into a situation on Woodward now where it's like, all of a sudden, where's the line again? I want to see our residential stay residential. And I want to kind of hold that line. So again, I'm excited about the idea of being able to do a shot in the arm from a parking standpoint to those businesses, but do it without tearing down a single home. I'm excited about that.
But some of those homes need to come down.
Well, but fine, but I want to see another home built in its place. Again, from a use standpoint, yeah,
Back to residential.
yeah. From the use, I want to hold the line there.
I mean, it just seems to me like what somebody just mentioned is the city should be proactive in looking for these opportunities when properties become available, just like La Salette. You know, I don't know if it's feasible, but maybe it could have been part of a community center, but we'll never know because the city wasn't proactive in looking for properties
And
ahead of time.
was La Salette ever actually put up for sale?
Yeah.
Same with these
Were these houses ever put up for
Sold.
sale, or did somebody go knocking at the door saying, you wanna sell?
Right, but again, like I say, I don't.
Right.
I'm not wholly comfortable just property hunting to tear stuff down and put it to make parking out of it. So
Revenue, that's for sure.
Oh, well, they do it,
yeah,
they do it in big circles.
I mean, but sometimes we forego. Yeah, I got you.
Well, the
Yeah.
businesses.
But sometimes we forego revenue in order
Stay
for.
around.
Yeah, but again, sometimes we forego revenue for quality of life improvements. I mean, we're sitting in an example of that. So just like parks, we look for areas maybe to expand parking too.
But my point is that the city would be aware of something like that well before the public is.
No,
You know
Not
that
a private sale.
You know that that school was empty. The city knew that that school was empty. They knew that it, I'm sorry, but it's a dying church. What conceivable use, the church had no use for it, clearly. That looks like an opportunity to me, and obviously the developers thought so too.
we did not have a willing seller in that scenario. Because I did make a pretty good attempt at trying to talk to them about some public uses for that building. And we just did not have a willing seller in this scenario. The Archdiocese was not interested in talking to us.
They aren't interested in talking to the city.
No, they've got it under contract with a private developer, and they're happy with that.
Before the private developer.
Well, then they wouldn't. Then they were publicly. All they were talking about was entertaining leases. That's really it. And we didn't have any insider information about this at all. We heard, kind of like everybody else heard, was, hey, did you hear somebody's got a contract on La Salette? Again, they didn't talk, we didn't know, we didn't have any advance foresight on this.
And was it ever a sale?
Actually,
I thought
no,
it was
Danny
always a
Vanson.
lease.
Yeah, well, I think even right now, it's the contract hasn't,
Long term.
yeah,
But
it's
the
under
former
contract.
city planner is the one that called Joe Novitsky, that was then turned around and called Terabella to get him interested in the property. She actually heard that it was she actually heard it was gonna go on the market, and she contacted him because she knew Joe Novitsky was involved in renovating older structures and repurposing them, basically. And he's the one that got Terabella involved on it. If you actually go back, they actually discussed that on the planning commission, videos. I wanna say right, the month of the preview, I think it was March of 2017. For the planning commission, it should be on there.
That,
Yeah, because what happened was originally they had a developer meeting, and Andy Vanson had met with developers to get them interested in certain areas and what they could possibly do. And Marty had asked Amy, was this as a result of that meeting? And she said, no. Actually, when I heard it was going on the market, she had contacted Joe Novitsky. And then Joe actually mentioned that when he got out for his speech. He thanked Amy for contacting him for his passion for reinvigorating older structures.
I had not heard that before.
But I did wanted to say about the parking. I actually like the idea, and I think people got to remember, if the person that sold the house would have sold the whole property originally to the city, and they tried to make that into a lot, the person behind and the person next to it probably would have had a problem with it. It's the same instance that they wanted to down on Griffith, just north of 12 Mile. The city purchased that property with one lot, and it would have actually made the parking lot behind there level. But the person that lived at the house north of it, and people around didn't want the parking lot to come any further, so now the lot sat, right? It's
Yeah,
still grass.
people don't like living.
So the fact that you guys were able, if you were able to make that agreement and make it happen and get the 20 feet, and then he can build another house, the next person, if they ever buy the house, is just gonna buy the house knowing that it is next to a lot.
Exactly.
You're not disrupting the neighborhood, which I think people should applaud that, because it's getting creative, but it's also filling a need, which is filling in that little bit of extra parking that is needed in that area.
Why we think it's worth having that
So I
conversation.
appreciate the effort, at least coming to
Yeah.
you're helping the owner, if he gets able to get what he wants, he gets a new home, and then we're able to get a municipal lot in that area. I think it can help both parties and keep the integrity of the single-family residential.
Keep people off, people parking on the streets.
Then rezoned for 30 years.
But you gotta understand, we didn't have a lot, there was a long period of time where there wasn't a lot of turnover in the ownership of those buildings. I mean, a lot of the owners were the same businesses for 20 to 25 years, so the opportunity was not there to do it, and the investment dollars, I mean, when you get somebody that's coming in and just taking a lease for a small building, he has no control of it. He's not gonna wanna buy the lot behind him. So it just so happened that the lot was sold, and the guy that wants to build a house, and this might actually be the perfect opportunity, the first opportunity we've ever really had to do something, because obviously the person that owned it for 30 years before never wanted to sell it to the city.
Well, I know, you rezoned it for a purpose.
The Dow Hospital was here for 60 years.
Right,
Yeah, I was gonna say,
you know,
They were there a lot longer than
but I mean, it just so happened that the buildings, the businesses that were there were booth areas on one side of the street, all the businesses were there for a very long time. So it's not, this is the first case where there was so much turnover in the area. You got Seamus closing, you got Dow Hospital closing, I mean, so much happening at once. And then the house selling, that this was the first time that kind of everything aligned. And I think that I actually like hearing about the plan that they're coming up with. I think that can really work. I mean, it's kind of getting the best of both worlds. Is it an overabundance parking? No, probably not. But in the case of the day, who's to know that we really need that much parking? I mean, I love parking, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we don't need more parking or something, but you can't just say, I want that much, and just take it. I mean, it wouldn't have worked. The resident at the first house south would have had a problem with a lot now coming up to his house, because he never owned a house with that circumstance. So you're creating an issue where if the person that owns a lot builds a new house and he eventually sells it, the person who moves in there is never going to complain, because he buys the house knowing that he's next to a lot, and the city gets a bigger parking area.
Well, but the back portion, in all reality, the back portion doesn't have to be parking. The city will purchase it. They could put up, greenery or something to make it very, very pleasant for you to walk.
You're still gonna be, it's still different. I live right next to the parking lot, I know. It's different. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't change my house for the world.
Right.
But it's just like, one time I had the Berkeley Theater across the street. Okay, for as much as I miss the Berkeley Theater or I miss shopping center because I can jump right out of my house and walk right over there and there, you know what? There's a lot of headache that's gone because they're gone. Okay, so a lot of people want a shopping market that's down at the end of the street, but they want it at the end of somebody else's block, and they want it next to somebody else's house. They never want it next door. They don't want the parking lot next door. And I'm telling you, you can't just. It sounds nice to say yes, let's have the whole plot as parking, but the person that lived at the next house that is not zone parking would have had an issue with it. And I think that would have been more of a headache than it's worth. So you're finding a middle ground and you're solving two issues at once. And I think that should be applauded rather than just people just walk away and say, well, nobody wanted to do anything.
Well, the thing of it is, you have to plan ahead, and apparently they did, and now they're saying,
Well, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, for 33 years now, they've recognized the need for parking right there. But if we can provide that, and satisfy that need, then from there, within the first 20 feet, then the need for the remainder 40 feet may not be there anymore. So again, that's why we're not saying, we're going to do this and done. Council very well could, or council and planning commission, they could very well still say, like, you know what, we still are not comfortable with letting this go. We may still need more parking there one day. Council could still say, we don't want to rezone this. And that guy would fix up the house, or I don't know exactly what he'd do. He'd probably fix up the house and then just try to sell it or lease it or something. But under this way, if we can satisfy the need, then really what they did in 1986 worked well. It gave us, it demonstrated foresight, and we were able to assemble that in the most minimal impact route possible. And again, applaud that decision that it was done that way. Because if it was residential, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation at all.
Well, the lack of parking, restricts the type of business that can go in here. Also, so I mean, there's more than just satisfying the neighbors. Also, as they planned ahead, but 20 feet, that's only like one row of parking.
Yeah. So in total, it would contribute to 60 feet of parking. And so you would be able to do a row of parking, a drive lane, and then a row of parking. And so that's where 60 feet becomes important to us. That's why 40 feet isn't as useful for us, because that's just a drive lane and a row of parking. The 60 feet will be useful to us because we can actually really maximize the amount of cars that can park in that area while having as little impact as possible from a depth perception, or from a depth standpoint in the residents. So I say it could be good for us. Again, we're having this conversation. Maybe something comes of it. Maybe we don't have 4 willing property owners, and we're back to that remaining zone parking, and the parking lot potentially goes this way instead of this way. Again, like I say, but again, nothing. There's no reason why we shouldn't have these proactive conversations with property owners when the time arises.
Have you really assessed the need for the amount of parking? I mean, in terms of what kind of businesses could potentially go in there?
No, we wouldn't base it on. We wouldn't try to tailor it so specifically to a certain amount.
Well, I mean, you do want to get new business.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah. All you just said, how many businesses have gone out of business there?
Yeah.
I'm guessing
But we
there's
wouldn't-
a reason.
Yeah, but we wouldn't tailor the number to a specific type of place, though. We would just basically assemble that area, maximize the amount of parking that we can get in that area, and then from there have it be used in support of businesses. I guess really as far as anybody wants to walk.
I mean, aren't you almost doubling the parking that's available there now?
There's no publicly provided parking there at all.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
It's more than double.
There's just spots, and for a long time, there was a lot taken up by, what was there was taken up by the play structures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I just think that whatever you're going is gonna make it better and make businesses more viable. It just so happened for a long time, there was a couple businesses there that didn't need almost any parking.
Sure. I mean, I think you can make a case we made the doll hospital.
I lived right at Thomas and Beverly
I know.
for a few years,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and I worked at R&T Auto Parts when before Doll Hospital took over that park.
Sure.
And, I mean, there was never at that time, parking was a lot simpler. I mean, it was, at night, Sealers used that lot over there, and then when Doll Hospital expanded, all of a sudden there was no parking for Sealers to use. And that's when infields, at the same time infills became, they put the divider up between the two parking spots because Sealers was, I mean, they were growing.
Oh, what's now Country Avenue?
Yeah, because I think it happened right around the same time they expanded that one part of the room, and it just, they were taking up more and more parking and stuff like that.
Sure.
Well, Berkeley sorely lacks parking and green space. So, fine balance there, but, you know, that was by design because back when Berkeley became a village and a city, most residents had one car. You know, not to be stereotypical, but the wife typically stayed home, raised the kids. They didn't have a car, they could walk into the
We walked a block,
supermarket.
12 miles to a
They
shopping
could do all the
center.
shopping on 12 miles. So there wasn't the need for parking, so we're kind of working in reverse order. If you
Thanks for
look at
coming.
other similar cities that are in the inner suburbs of different parts of the country, what have they done to increase parking? And,
You know what, Roy, look here.
Yeah, you can go Vern. I'm not a huge, you know what though? On that note though, yeah, I'm not a huge fan of, you know, Verlook has more of a stacked downtown, and we're so linear in ours. I don't think platform parking or parking structures are ever going to work for us. But you're right, and who knows what the future holds? I feel like I've been doing this for 10, 12 years now. I feel like we've been 10 years away the whole time from like nobody needing cars anymore. And parking's gonna be a thing of the past, and I think at this point, we're still 10 years out. And so who knows
Still
what
waiting for
happens.
those flying cars.
Yeah, I know, where we're going, we don't need roads, right? Yeah.
But doesn't the city have a plan in place or even a concept of, well, we'd like these kind of businesses here and we'd like those kind of businesses in this area? I mean,
We do that through zoning, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And like I said, and through master planning process and through the downtown planning process, we're re-upping a lot of those, but, you know, the market, you're best to let the market decide what's gonna go where and what works. So, I don't know that we're gonna be, you know, we try to attract certain types of businesses. It'd be nice to have, you know, specific types of restaurants or coffee shops or retail locations or like personal service kind of places. But, you know, we try to attract those, but really it's a market-based decision. We don't have it planned down to the point where, like, this storefront is going to be this type of business moving forward.
well, yeah, but areas.
Yeah,
But I mean,
yeah, we do it through zoning.
You might attract certain kinds of businesses if you had more parking available.
No, we're all saying the same
Just
thing.
like downtown in Detroit,
Yeah.
you know, they give tax benefits to people who will come in and put the kind of business in that they want.
Yeah.
Businesses that look at different areas where to locate, they're gonna scratch Berkeley off the list because we don't qualify in terms of different parking. So it's kind of a wait to see, you know, it may be years, maybe decades, you know, until we finally get it to where we want it.
I know, but a lot of the conversation we saw with the Green Lantern parking stuff was that, as of now, even with Silla's, cars were lining up down the street to go to Silla's. And that was, Green Lantern's smaller, like the interior is going to be smaller, but still, they're going to need, we know they're going to need, those people need to go somewhere. And we would all like to not see them park along the streets at night, especially if they're going to be open late. You know, it's nothing worse than having somebody kind of hear them out the front window, or somebody walking up and getting in the car and driving away at 2 o'clock at night.
The Green Lantern would have stuck to the original plan, but that's trying to change it. They probably would have been open for business as we speak right now.
What's the status with them?
They're still gonna, moving forward, again, as I've said, they're back to their original footprints. They're not gonna try to do the outdoor dining area, because it's just not within their reach right now from a parking
And
standpoint.
the grandfather in as far as parking.
Yeah.
Just as far as, no, just want to make sure because that's part of the original plan, and I understand they said they were only limiting it to one handicap parking spot. My concern was that it was only partially true because they were actually restriping and reconfiguring the parking lot to give them a couple extra spots.
Yeah, they were trying to maximize their space.
I just wanna make sure though that when they come in, if they're doing any type of restriping, I really hope that that goes before the planning commission, because there's a lot of rules right now where under the first Green Lantern plan, 3 or 4 of the parking spots in that first row along Thomas was actually been disallowed because our zoning ordinances do not allow you to back up and cross the sidewalk 4 inches 12 mile. And that's what has been required because of the angle they were putting on those spots was so steep that you actually were crossing the sidewalk to back out and get out of the lot. And our zoning ordinances say that you have to be able to get out of your parking spot inside the confines of the parking lot and to be able to pull out of the spot and leave. And so, but Tim, my thing is, on the other side, the last one was actually in the egress, was actually in the exit lane of the parking lot. And that is also not allowed in our old ordinances. And Tim did not even notify that, did not mention that to the planning commission, just said, no, they're only losing 1 spot. He had no issue.
Yeah,
And
this
the other thing was the parking was restriped at the back where the dumpster was. They were actually blocking the dumpster, which you had to have correct. And nobody was saying there was a problem with that. And I just didn't understand that.
Again, you were here a little bit late, but one of the things that we talked about earlier was that we are seeking a professional planner to take the role of community development director moving forward. So we'll have a change in that position coming up.
Okay.
In order to try to lend a lot of that in-house expertise.
Well,
The more in-house expertise you have, again, the less you have to rely on, consultants and outside folks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, are you gonna have, I think there's some kind of rule that you have to have a bike rack for so many parking spaces?
If you provide a bike rack, you can forego up to 2 parking spaces.
Okay, that would be an issue. A lot of people bike around here. That would be a good place for a family to get on
Sure.
their bikes and go up and have.
Specific to Green Lantern, they did utilize that in their plan.
Okay.
But it's still, again, they were still,
So there's not enough racks around.
right.
Although you don't need all these bike racks in this park. I've never seen a bike hooked up on this park, and I come here a lot.
Yeah. I see a lot of parks, just turned over.
Around here, they've never seen anybody hooked up, because
Yeah.
they knew one of these bike racks up over.
I do see a lot of bicycles just turned over.
Yeah, but
Scattering
they're
around.
not
It's like,
hooked
come
up
on,
with
they're
bike
right there.
You know,
That's all.
this pavilion is 40 years old this year, right?
What?
Yeah.
This pavilion was made 40 years ago this
Nice.
summer.
Oh, it was?
Oh yeah, I was 7 years old, I lived right down the street
All
there.
right.
We came here
Looks
every day
good.
when I was building it.
Looks good for its age, I'd say, right?
Matt,
It's held up pretty
speaking
good.
of bike
Oh, yeah.
racks, what happened to the bike rack that was by the WBRK entrance at City Hall? It wasn't there Monday. I walked past it.
We just redid that sidewalk. I think it just got moved out of the way temporarily.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
yeah,
just
I
did that
did that
sidewalk,
sidewalk.
and it's floating around City Hall somewhere, I can guarantee it.
It's gonna come back.
Yeah.
How do I
Yeah, we still have the one by the mailbox.
Cute bike racks.
Yeah, it's nothing to look at. Even the one that we have that's bolted into the ground by the mailbox it's rusted. And that's one thing that drives me nuts is even just walking around like downtown area, the rust around things like that. It's like maybe that's where we should be spending some monies here. Is
They make them as almost artistically,
Yeah.
you know.
In a
Why
previous
can't we have
community, we-
something like that in our DDA.
That'd be
That's where
fun stuff,
I
yeah.
would like to see money being spent.
and
It's
I know
There are
that's.
some neat looking bike racks that look like a bike, I think.
Yeah.
that's a cool
We
design.
had in my former community, and they're still there. Right before I left, it was like the penny farthing bikes, the big wheel, little wheel.
Oh, yeah.
We made a couple of them that looked like that.
Okay.
And they came out really nice. I was impressed with the artist on that. But yeah, that's a great example of some. I looked at some. I forget what the city was, but it started with a B because they were B bike racks. Like just a letter, capital letter
Oh,
B,
like a B?
and you could tie your bike racks up to those. They were nice looking too. And it gave 2 complete loops, so you could get a couple people to lock their bike up to it. It worked out really well.
Yeah, that was
Sure.
the Memorial Day service on Monday.
More benches, right?
Pardon me?
More benches?
No,
Oh,
but we brought out portable chairs, that's
All
fine.
right, all
But the state of disrepair, the gazebo, the bricks, which are kind of sunken into the ground, and the war memorial itself, a lot of the mortar is cracked and broken.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Who maintains that?
the juniors are going to be redoing the placard. They've already volunteered for that. We've got this summer we've got McCoy who does a lot of our maintenance stuff. we have them tasked with doing the tuck pointing and not tuck pointing, doing the painting around the gazebo.
Okay.
And then we'll have to find out about the brickwork. I don't know. I'll have to take a look at it and see. But we, I want to get the path that we had that went from the front of the building to the back of the building.
Yeah.
I'd like to get that put back. And we took down the landscaping around the covered area so that you could access it now. So we're trying to do more with it's our front face to the world. It's our front lawn. It ought to look a lot nicer than it does right now. So there's a couple of projects. I will have to find out specifically about the bricks though, because I don't know that we've got something in place for that.
And I believe the bricks predate when they put a new sidewalk in. By new, I mean within the past decade.
Sure.
So that may have been an issue with why the bricks are now sit lower than the sidewalk.
There is a perpetual care plan and account
Yes.
for,
Yeah, in fact,
for
the
bricks
Historical
and for
Society
the
has,
gazebo.
yeah. Yep, there's an account that's was set up specifically for this types of things. That's in part what that you guys have been raising money for a couple of years.
Historical committee, yeah.
Yep.
Sale of bricks.
So that's our planning funding model for at least restoring the gazebo. We actually redid some of the electrical too. That got done earlier this year. So now the light's back on at night. It's not dark on that. So that's good, but it's more to come for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Any more progress, or any progress rather, on the public-private partnership potential? Try saying that 3 times fast.
Thank you.
For City Hall and for saving the firehouse.
Yeah, not a lot of forward movement on that. We've been talking with the consultant who thinks, there's potential there, but they are, we would be entering into a contract with them, and we haven't done that yet. So there's not been a lot of progress there.
There's no question about saving the firehouse.
Yeah.
I'm gonna camp out
It's a
right in
must.
front there.
Yeah.
Bulldozer's gonna have to leave.
Yeah. No, it's a must. That's a beautiful building. It's held up better than the expansion. So it's the crown jewel. Especially if we can ever get that second floor restored to its former glory.
Is there gonna be any attempts to address some of the, just on the firehouse, not necessarily on the side where they added on the carport or whatever, around the, what is that around the door? The brick?
The mortar?
The mortar, well, not the mortar, the actual,
The actual
the
facade.
stone. The stone is deteriorating, the bottom two pieces on
Yeah.
each side of the door. And-
Yeah.
and it's actually, you rub against it and the powder comes off, and those two pieces, if they can be addressed soon, would probably keep everything else together.
Yeah. So is the trim work around that needs to be repainted to keep it from deteriorating.
No,
There's a lot of work that needs to
stone,
be. I know,
the
but
stone.
that in addition to the
Yeah.
wooden elements that have been painted need to be repainted so
Yeah.
that keep it from deteriorating as well. Yeah, there's no doubt we need, like I say, yet another one of our buildings that needs to play some catch-up work from a maintenance standpoint.
But that's maintenance. And
Yeah.
I think that's the issue that people have all the time.
Well-
Particularly when you're talking about a community center, now we have to have a new one, they say, well, because they weren't maintained. Another example of maintenance needed, and we're not doing it.
Oh, we are. I say we've caught up quite a bit in the last couple of years on our maintenance, but there's some things that just are literally just past its useful life. That's the fire hall is an example of that. I think the way it's built, it could last quite a bit longer. But yeah, we've played a lot of catch up. If you looked at, like say, our budgets in the last couple of years, the investments in facilities and capital needs is where you've really seen the push from a dollars and cents standpoint. Yeah, our parks aren't any different from that. We've invested significantly in parks, facilities, but some things are just there. Some things just should have been rebuilt, and they should have been rebuilt decades ago. And through maintenance and we kept them going along. But now, really, the only value to that now at this point is, I guess it's diminishing returns is the best way to say it. Sure, we've got them going, but now they're barely holding together. And I think you and I talked before, and I've used this analogy before. It's like you got a 100-year-old man, and he looks terrible, but you don't come up to him and say like, man, like you should take care of yourself. It's like kudos for making it this long, kind of thing. And that's why I kind of feel like we are sometimes. Is you get knocked for not maintaining things, but you don't get this far without at least putting some dollars into it.
I think a lot of people would be surprised at the number of commercial buildings along Coolidge and 12 Mile that are coming up to really close to 100 years old.
Nice. I bet they would.
How do they look?
It's, you know, if you remove some of the faux siding and some of the stucco and stuff.
Yeah.
I'd
It's a
like
mixed
to,
bag.
I'd like to see a whole row of 12 Mile, you know, like where the Green Topia was.
Yeah.
That row there. Beautiful original brick is behind a lot of these things. When they redid Berkeley Common, they stripped off whatever the frontage was. Unfortunately, in my opinion, they painted it gray. I think they should have left it in the original brick, but it's there, and it can always be restored.
Gatekeepers just talking about trying to do that too with their facade, taking off some of the stuff that Doll Hospital had put on over the years, that wood framing, and seeing if they can get back to restoring the original too.
Well, again, that building's not 100, but maybe 70 years old. I mean, these are getting historic.
Looks like that one building, I had that picture of, it used to be the fish and chips place.
This
Two brick ones that are right next to each other, those are the original.
The owner of that particular business, a restaurant, he was a bricklayer, and he built that himself, so.
I believe
Really
Council
beautiful
Thrift has a really beautiful facade behind it based on some of the old pictures I've seen. It's got the shell on there now, but you know, if they're ever interested in it, that's a gorgeous building underneath.
That was a supermarket that they just got through 40s, again, yeah.
That AMP or
No, BNC, BNC.
How about a sidewalk program? What's happening with that?
Sidewalk program we budgeted for this year, so we're gonna start that. We're gonna try to phase it across the whole city. What I would like to do is set it up to where we never really stop doing it. And so if it's phased out to where we're working in a different section each year, by the time we're done, we're ready to start the first one again. That'd be great, but we did, seeded 290,000 this, in the upcoming budget. To start that program, so we'll see more information, or see more movement on that this upcoming fiscal year.
Yeah, we need that, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's again, it's a tale of competing interests because we love our tree-lined streets, but as we walk, we walked a big section in order to kind of get a sense of what we're looking at from the program. And some of the ones you saw, they were 15 years ago, the last time they came through. They're the same ones, they're date stamped, but they're the same ones that have come up a little bit.
Yeah.
But the tree is gorgeous,
I've
and,
had
and it's
my house for
beautiful.
37 years, and I've replaced the sidewalks twice because of the trees, the whole thing.
And Tree Board's done some really good work. They've been really trying to study ways of doing like root barriers and things like that. At least for new plantings, some of the more established trees, it's really just too late. But they've been looking into root barriers and things like that. And hopefully some good information comes out of that. But they've been really working hard on trying to keep that from happening again. We were a little bit smart about the species that we plant too. And try to put trees in that don't spread out as much and don't have the potential for heating sidewalks too.
No silver maples, please.
No, silver maples ought to be banned in every situation possible, so. Yeah, they from a tree standpoint, they are kind of like the bane of our existence right now. Is so many of them are planted at the same time, so many of them now are dying at the same time. They're gorgeous, they pop, they grow quickly, they nice large leafy canopy, but the way they die from the inside out and really don't show any signs of it from a leafing standpoint right up until the end, they're terrible.
They basically all went in after the elms died from Dutch elm.
That's why they all are kind of getting old at the same time. And so they really did a mass planting of those because they wanted to catch the canopy back up.
For the sidewalk program, and again, the business areas, it would seem to be the simplest to be to go to the people that own the building and say, you know what, you're responsible for this, because as homeowners, we're responsible for it.
Yeah.
When you go through, I'm gonna be the one with the bill for it, so the people that own, whatever, building on Robina, definitely on Coolidge too, Berkeley Manor and places like that.
Yeah.
Instead of, at one point we were talking about that, the EDA was trying to decide if the city was
Sure.
into this and that. Now, who owned the building, you're responsible for the sidewalk. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Here's your bill.
Don't they have a special assessment just like we do?
Yeah, we've gone through special assessments so far, having like for spot improvements on there. The nice thing about doing a program though is sometimes you can call a concrete contractor and say, I need 3 flags replaced. And it's like, hello? Hello? Like they don't call you back, or they charge you an arm and a leg for it. The nice thing about putting together a lot of these projects all at once is it ends up being cheaper by leveraging the economies of scale. And then it's sort of a cost sharing because we do all the engineering and the pre-work for it. And essentially the contractor just comes in and does the construction part, and that's what we bill to the homeowner or the business owner. But again,
Okay, so
I don't.
they are going to be part of the
Yeah, we do that.
sidewalk
Yeah, we do that
program.
special assessment as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, misunderstood.
No, sorry if I wasn't clear. But that's Robina though. I'd like to do something more transformative, and not just say like, hey, business owner, replace the sidewalk slabs in front of you, or building owner, replace the sidewalks in front of your slab. Robina specifically, I would like to be something more transformative, more that's a jewel of the downtown area, something that feels more like a refresh.
Well, you've got all the business owners right there.
Yeah.
They can come up with something.
Yeah, and it's mostly owned by one property owner, so it likely it wouldn't fall to businesses.
But
It would fall to building
the
owners.
lessees, though, they all have an interest in
Yeah, and
where
they would
it's
pay.
gonna be at.
They would pay for it probably through their lease dollars, but we would be billing the owner.
The oldest sidewalk slab in the city of Berkeley, anybody want to guess as to the year? Well,
1863.
okay, no, I should have said that. 1915, it's stamped in there, and it's near the corner of Brookline and Rosemont.
Oh,
But it's held up over 100 years.
Yeah.
So, let's get those concrete people to work.
I know, they don't, certainly don't pour like they used to, even 10, 15 years ago when I was, a young man pouring concrete. It's like you would swing a hammer at some of these things marked like 1940, 1950. You'd swing a sledge at it and it would just laugh at you. Like it was like, holy cow. Like, it's like, you sure you want to replace this? What I'm putting in is not going to be near as good as this. This is like full on Portland.
The homeowner's actually conducive to having us dig that up for the Berkeley Historical Museum.
Nice.
Where would you put it? You're gonna put a
I
piece
don't know, I just think it's really cool. It's the oldest sidewalk.
See, that's another.
Kudos.
Shrine it where it's
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Kudos to the Historical Society for your recent large discovery.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Oh,
put it where you're gonna put
great
that.
job.
Well, yeah, that's, we didn't really think it through all the way. It's there.
But you found it.
Yeah.
You may stay there a while, too.
An off question. In this neighborhood, where I live, I noticed on almost every corner, especially down Mortensen, but also down all of the streets, there's cones sitting, orange cones. And somebody suggested, well, maybe that's telling where they're gonna need to change the street sign. It's like, no, because it's at all 4 corners. Can you tell me what that's about?
No, not offhand.
From 11 to Catalpa on Mortensen?
No, you're saying around here, right?
No,
No.
you're saying the other side of Coolidge.
Where do I-
Where was it at? Where were they at?
That's probably
Like
for their race.
Mortensen, Wiltshire,
It should still be
Dorothea,
there.
I don't know about
Well,
Dorothea,
no,
but
that's
Wiltshire.
coming up is it this weekend or next week? No, it's this weekend.
What
It's
is
a
it?
race.
The race is coming up. Is that the first,
It's on each
the
corner.
second?
Which one?
And I'll tell you, they've been there so long.
Because it was last Friday, there was one for Rogers Elementary.
Maybe so, I'm not sure where she lives, maybe if it's in that footprint or not.
Okay.
Mortensen, north of Catalpa,
Oh,
south of
Wiltshire.
12 Mile,
that
that whole
would be the
strip.
race.
And then down Earlmont, Rosemont, Edgewood,
On the
Wiltshire.
sidewalks.
On the
Cones on the
corners.
sidewalk?
Are they anywhere near where sewer drains are?
Well, you wouldn't have
I-
one in every corner.
I would have to find out, I would have to find out for you. If you'll shoot me an email and give me a quick reminder, I will find out
It's just
why that's there.
curious,
Yeah.
and it's not hurting me or anything.
Yeah.
It's just that I know the kids, because my grandkids, they come and steal them, and they think it's so funny.
Oh, jeez,
They
okay.
put them weird places.
All right. Yeah, offhand, I'm not sure what would have that kind of scope, what we'd be doing.
Nice to know.
No, speaking aside, I just thought about it. I'm very fortunate. My father-in-law used to be head of streets and building maintenance in Madison Heights, so he he sees little things, and we talk about a lot of the different aspects. And we were going down Edwards the other day, and we were coming up on Griffith, and he pointed out the stop sign, and it looks like they're newer signs, but he said he was surprised that the stop sign and the other ones that he saw around that was nearby were allowed, because apparently there's a regulation that says they're supposed to be 7 feet off the ground and within so far from the street, for visibility, but it seems like ours are so close to the street, and this was only like a 6-foot sign. I mean, it doesn't even have clearance to walk underneath. I mean, it's very low. I mean, it was even with the window of the car, and it looks lower than it used to be. I mean, it looks like a newer stop sign. I don't know when you guys replace them, probably.
I'm not sure. I know we've been going through and replacing signs because reflectivity standards changed.
Well, yeah, but no, but they're supposed to be a certain height off the ground so that you're not interfering with it.
Yeah, and like I said, reflectivity standards have changed too, so I know we're replacing them. So maybe either
you might want to go by, if you get a chance when you leave on your way home, maybe swing by the. It's very low. I mean, I swear it's probably about this high off the ground. And they're supposed to be. There's a national standards that they're supposed to all meet. All stop signs are supposed to be a certain height off the ground and a certain distance from clearance or whatever.
So let's take a look at it. Okay. So let's, it looks like the sun's kind of going down on us. Let's call 8:29 as our stopping point. Again, thank you everybody for coming out. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. It's, again, Facebook's good and all, social media is good and all, but it is nice to actually see faces and have a dialogue with people. So, again, very much appreciative. Thank you all.
Thank you.